Hello, good evening, and welcome back. Well, it's about time. Rishi Sunak in bid to curb foreign aid budget. Chancellor wants 0.7% target axed as he struggles with public finance crisis. And the whole idea of a public finance crisis has been on the books for quite a few years now. And the 0.7% target from the OECD, of course, isn't really held by many people. I mean, sure, Norway, Denmark, that's about it. The other major players, with France of 0.4, China of 0.36, and America of 0.16. So it's not really something that seems to be very well enforced. It's similar to the NATO contributions, that they're not very well enforced either, hoping for about 2%. Yeah, good luck with that. And of course, Trump then tried to get the NATO members to stump up the amount that they should be paying. So these things normally aren't so well enforced, but for whatever reason, Britain seems to think, yes, we should definitely be giving more foreign aid. So, well, how about you get your own house in order before you start thinking that you could do better for other countries? And the way China does it is known as debt trap diplomacy, the idea being that they'll give a loan instead, because their aid is about $38 billion, but the loans are hundreds of billions, at least 274, depending on which figures you use. And so they say, well, here you go, we will loan you this money. If you can't pay back, then we take your land. That's it. A bit like a mortgage. That loan you the money, and if you can't pay back, we take your house. It's that kind of thing that China does, but with land for a nation instead of with a house for a homeowner. Whereas the UK foreign aid isn't really very well accounted for, which will hardly surprise you. But when it's spent on things like dance troops, you're starting to wonder exactly where this money's going. And of course, when it goes to more corrupted states, when the money is then spent on just getting initial food, which is obviously, a worthwhile and a good idea, but then the recipients have absolutely no interest on putting the money towards getting a more sustainable future for themselves. Instead, they become too reliant on the aid, as we see time and time and time again, that they do not then develop the entrepreneurial skills or any of the requirements in order to be self-sufficient. It just doesn't happen. And then you've got a never-ending cycle of, instead of teaching a man to fish, you're just giving a man a fish. And that's what's going on here. And concurrently, of course, they like to say that the NHS is having such a shit time. And at the moment, 7.2% of our GDP is spent on the NHS. So if you put the 0.7% on that, then the NHS gets within itself a 10% rise, which isn't going to be fantastic, given as the new vaccine program is supposed to cost $32 billion and the foreign aid for us is about 19 billion, so that still doesn't quite cut it. Because we're very strapped for cash, which you'd think would be surprising for a Conservative government. It would be expected under Labour, but no, these Tories, they just seem to love running at a deficit. Because, of course, if you're saying that you're making enough money, then, oh dear, then you're not going to get as much funding next year, and it's going to be more difficult. It's essentially actually what was seen in the USSR, where they'd have their factories. Let's say they're farming potatoes. There you go. They're farming potatoes, and if somebody thinks, "Oh, I'm going to do really well this year," then they do. Then they're going to be expected to do it next year, which is going to be quite difficult. So instead, they go, "Okay, what's the least I can get away with, so that I'm not expected anymore next year, but not so little that they're aware of what I'm doing, and therefore my head's for the job." That is the game that's played here, with less severe consequences. It'll be you're fired instead of you're killed. But it's exactly the same principle, because there isn't a free market there, that price isn't able to fulfill its usual function that it does in a free market, that the idea of value can't be there. So, also, along with foreign aid, they're questioning about military spending as well. So at the moment, with their 0.7% contribution, they're basically thinking, well, can we scrap it? But no, the OECD wouldn't really like that. In which case, what other things can we use for a tax write-off? I mean, yeah, okay, sure, you can say, for one of your good reasons, is that economic hardship, but of course that's a bit of a grey area, as you'd expect, and therefore it isn't as easy as it sounds. Otherwise, you could use that any year. Just say, well, we've got a deficit, therefore we can't pay it. That wouldn't be a good enough excuse. So, as they say, any changes need the unanimous support of all 30 member countries on the OECD's Development Assistance Committee. And ministers could choose to unilaterally ditch the OECD definition and draw up their own, although this could provoke a fresh row about the country's role on the world stage. I don't think that really matters at this point. I think that the Tories have fucked us up enough to not have to worry about being a world player. Really not. Maybe London, but that's about it. And that seems to be going down the toilet as well. And if Biden does win in America, then America's going to go down to the shitter. And hey, it's going to be what Frankie Boyle predicted several years ago about having our new Chinese overlords. So better start learning Chinese then. So to say on the issue of military spending, it's understood Bojo has told the Chancellor he wants a £15 billion multi-year settlement for defence. Sunak has pushed back and said he wants a one-year settlement worth £1.9 billion. Ministry of Defence says it needs $20 billion over 4 years, or will be forced to cut the size of the army to below 74,000 troops, and acts plans for new fighter jets. A defence source said even £15 billion would not cut it. But at the moment, what is our army doing? It seems to be that there was a lot of fat that could be cut, and a lot of piss poor planning that could be rectified, and then you wouldn't have to spend so many billions of pounds, as is often the case, as is almost always the case when it comes to any corporations, for example, that they don't just get to say, give us the money or we're fucked, because then they say, well, I guess you're fucked then. You got to earn the money. But when it's a government-run institution, that doesn't happen. Just the same with bailouts, that then big companies that are too big to not fail eventually fail, and then they say, well, give us money or we're fucked. And then the government, for whatever reason, goes, yeah, we'll give you money. So, well, why? You made piss-poor business decisions. You should be responsible for your own actions. But at least Iceland bailed their bankers after the 2008 crash. So that's something. But that's how it stands. So instead they're trying to think, well, okay, can we get around the OECD definition and just say, well, what about the loaning for other countries? Yeah, and the spending that we're doing in other aspects that goes towards foreign countries. Do you think that could count instead? So it's a very British way of trying to weasel your way around it. Very legal speak, finding any excuse. But the long and the short of it is, trying to cut the 0.7%, which is good news. Not because people don't deserve help, not at all. But the country is there to protect its own citizens, the people who elect them, and the denizens within their own country. That is their first and foremost priority. When it comes to charity, that's down to the individuals within that country to donate to charities, if they should wish to do so. Not for the government to do it. No, if you feel like you wish to be generous and donate, by all means you go do that. Just like the giving pledge that billionaires have signed to donate half of their money when they die. If they wish to sign that giving pledge, then by all means do it. Will it actually help people? Probably not, because then it's a handout instead of actually earning it. Just like how lottery winner recipients tend to have a worse life afterwards than before it. It's exactly the same principle, and why like council houses are in disarray. Because if you give someone something for free, they haven't earned it, they don't understand the value of it, and they don't take care of it. So, yeah, cutting foreign aid is a good idea. If you wish to enact business opportunities in those countries, by all means go do that. But that is not the government's job. That's down to individuals. And, of course, they should be more inward-facing than outward-facing. But that's just my 2 cents. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think, well, no, actually, we should be giving more to other countries in order to show that we're generous and therefore we're like living the $30,000 millionaire lifestyle? That is to say, we're pretending we're much better off than we are, where we're just renting a flashy car for a day because we can't actually afford it, but we're trying to look good. Or you think that it's good to evoke that image, and therefore, although you're losing 0.7% here, the image you portray brings in more money from other countries because they're more likely to do business with you because you seem like a more upstanding chap as a country. Either way, let me know down below. Always intrigued to hear what you guys have to say. And as always, like, comment, share, subscribe. All the good stuff really does help me out a lot. And have a good one.